Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Today we're taking a look at this original revolving flintlock rifle. Multi-shot flintlock pistols and long guns were the forerunners of the true revolvers of the 19th century and are very rare and highly desirable antique arms. A small number of firearms were built using this system on this long gun in 3- and 4-shot variations and were manufactured by a group of gunmakers operating in the town of Carlsbad in Bohemia. The system used on this gun is similar to the Wender or turnover design employed on the double-barrel pistols and long guns in the flintlock era, but instead of having multiple complete barrels, the gun has 3 4¼ inch chambers with pans and frizens mounted to the sides. By giving each chamber its own pan and frizzen, no complicated automatic priming mechanism is required. After pulling on the release trigger at the front of the trigger guard, these chambers are manually rotated to bring them into alignment with the main barrel and the shared lock, which is the back action format. While the lock is manually cocked each time, this would significantly improve the time between shots compared to a single shot flintlock muzzleloader. When we see revolving flintlocks like this one, this system employed here is one of the more common systems used. I like to think about it as a shortened swivel breech, like we see a little bit here in the United States. But unlike the swivel breech that we see here in the United States, we're not rotating entire barrel assemblies. We're just rotating this set of chambers like we would see nearly 100 years later in Colt's revolvers. To give you an example of how this functions here, we have this secondary trigger or lever at the front of our trigger guard. By placing the cock on half cock here, we can depress that lever and rotate the cylinders into position. When the next cylinder is in position here, this trigger or lever arm snaps forward, locking the cylinder in place. So I can rotate this around, and you hear that snap in there, and we're ready to go with our next chamber. I'm going to set the cock back down at its rest point while we talk about this a little bit more. As if the rotating chamber concept was not interesting enough, because of the expense and the quality of skill that was needed to produce something like this, the rest of the rifle itself is done to the nines. These cylinders all have similar scenes on them as we go around. From the breech end of the cylinder to the muzzle of the cylinder, we have beautiful scroll engraving in a rectangular canvas around the top of the scroll. In the center, we have a variety of female busts engraved into each cylinder, and even the shape of these plates and the frizzen spring and the priming pan, they're all done in an artful manner. They're all very sleek. They all have purposeful shape and design to them, just adding to the beauty of this piece. Coming back to our lock, we have a back action lock here, and it is engraved with a beautiful hunting scene coming up to the cock and our cock screw. We have what we would deem now a Phillips head cock bolt here, but we have beautiful relief engraving here in the cock with a surface of the scrolls, and then below it kind of our background surface that is matte a little bit in contrast to the engraving on the rest of the scroll work on the cock. We have a rather large lock here, I believe both representative of the time period that this was produced, but also a durability factor, and it's giving us a much larger canvas for some of these artful representations. Surrounding the stag hunting scene on the lock plate, we have a beautiful wide engraved border of scroll work with various degrees of shade lines in here. It's not been blackened at all, so it's a little bit difficult to see depending on the lighting that you're looking at, but the level of detail is incredible. Coming off of our lock plate, we have a beautiful carved motif around it, and this goes along with the carved motifs around our barrel tang here. Coming back, we have a rather large brass trigger guard. Like I noted, we have our cylinder cycling lever, for lack of a better term, at the front. We have a single trigger here. Like we see in many of these sporting flintlocks, we have a beautifully long base of our trigger guard. We have a single screw just behind the trigger plate, and then we have a sling swivel back here before we get to the end of our cut and motifed trigger guard. The rest of the toe is very plain. We have no toe plate until we get back to our butt plate here, where we have our traditional brass butt plate on top. We have a beautiful cherub or angel figurine here playing some kind of flute, surrounded by a lot of scrolls and relief work evocative of high class for the time, is the kind of thing that we think about when we're looking at something like this. The rear face of our butt plate features some nice, simple, deep engraved borders surrounding it. We have one screw on the rear of the butt plate and one on the top up here. Coming across this top crest of our stock here, we have beautiful carving separating the wrist from the butt stock. And we come up to our barrel tang. We have more beautiful scroll work and carving coming around this top of the stock. Our barrel tang is also beautifully engraved. We have a fairly symmetrical scroll and leaf pattern engraving. We have 2 tang screws on this tang, and both of them are engraved with very similar patterns as well. Jumping forward from our cylinders, we have our secondary circular plate connecting the cylinder assembly to the forestock and the barrel assembly. We have a beautiful traditional engraved border here and some more scrolls and leaf patterns coming forward about an inch, just a little bit over an inch on the front part, or I guess the rear part of this barrel. We then have the maker's mark engraved here. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it, so I'll list it here on the screen for you to check out and be able to research on your own. Coming forward of the cylinder assembly here, we have a very short forestock on this rifle. This overall is a very light piece. Even though we have all this hardware here in the center, we have next to nothing except for the barrel at the front, making it a very light piece. We have a continuation of carving like you would see in a typical half stock or even full stock muzzleloader, where we have a bit of carving here along the barrel channel and then what will become the ramrod channel. We have a beautifully engraved ramrod pipe and entry pipe here with some more sculptural elements attached to it. We have our front sling stud or sling swivel back here in conjunction with our ramrod pipe. And then we have our wonderfully cute little short ramrod, because we're not loading through the entire barrel, through the whole muzzle like you would see on a more traditional looking muzzleloader. We're just needing to load the cylinders themselves. While the barrel is a little bit of a different profile than we typically see, it is very similar in that it goes from octagon to round, except for our top face of the barrel, which remains flat all the way through, all the way up to our brass blade front sight. Now, I have been referring to this piece as a rifle, but I do want to clarify it is a smooth bore. It measures about 5/8 of an inch in diameter at the muzzle, but we do have a tapered bore here and a little bit of swamping as you look at the profile. Flipping over to our side plate side here, we can see a beautiful brass side plate with another hunting scene. We have a hunter and several dogs chasing a large hare or rabbit. I love these hunting scenes because they're so personal. It's neat to see period hunting represented on these pieces. I think it's a neat thing to identify how they were hunting, the areas that they were hunting in. We can see some brush and some trees here. We also have nice notes of the game that they were hoping to take. Heading back to the rest of the stock here, we have the opposite side of our carving here coming around the crest of the stock. And then the rest of the buttstock here is left very plain. We don't have any inlays or any carving back here in the buttstock on either side. We're just left with the beautiful grain structure of the stock. In shouldering the piece, it's very comfortable. It's very light. As I shared before, you'd have to be conscious of how quickly you were moving when using this piece, because you could overcorrect on your game, but it nonetheless is a very interesting rifle. When holding it, the only real place you can put your offhand is up here on this forestock. That can be a little nerve-wracking for those of us familiar with chain fires, but with the anatomy of this cylinder structure, where we only have 3 chambers, each of the other vent holes are away from the igniting hole. So in a perfect situation, it'd be very difficult to get a chain fire out of this piece. And we're left to assume that when shooting or hunting with this piece, the chambers that you have not fired would have their frizens snapped shut like so, making it all the more difficult for a spark or ember to get into the chamber. All in all, a really neat piece of firearms and really technologic history here for us as people. It's neat to see these weird in-between developments for firearms and muzzleloaders in general. I think a lot of times we can hyper-focus in on what became the popular thing, what became the standard, but a lot of times there's some of these weird offshoots out there that we can take a look at and really enjoy. I'd like to thank the Rock Island Auction Company for allowing me to get hands-on and to show you a lot of these original muzzleloaders. If you'd like to learn more about this or any of the other muzzleloaders that we're taking a look at here, you can check out the Rock Island Auction Company on their social media pages. They're posting a lot of high-quality photographs and documentation to go with these pieces, and I encourage you to use those photos and documents for your own research at home. If you're looking to build something like this, those photos and references could be an invaluable resource for you. I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.